elected?
So just to harken back to what Jonathan was talking about with Pete Hegseth being seen as manifestly wrong for that job by most of the people who then confirmed him, his confirmation fight was a definitional moment in this government for this particular reason. A few days earlier, Trump had pulled Matt Gaetz, who had been investigated by the House Ethics Committee when he was a congressman. Trump had nominated him to be the Attorney General. It was an example many people suggested to us in Trump's world of Trump seeing how far he could go. And it turned out with that one not very far. He was pulled after a few days. I think it was 8 days. Hegseth, when he started to face some troubles, accusations of sexual misconduct and things from his past, basically Trump and his extended orbit drew a line and decided to go all in support of him. And it wasn't just Trump, it was this ecosystem of conservative allied groups around him. And they decided that they were not going to tolerate dissent. So one senator, Joni Ernst of Iowa, who was vocal that she had concerns about Pete Hegseth, she herself was a rape victim, she found herself swarmed. She found herself facing the threat of a primary challenge. She found aspects of her divorce records being talked about on social media. She found herself under siege from various corners. And she became the object lesson for members of Trump's own party of what they would be subjected to. It wasn't just a potential loss of their seat, which is very valuable to these lawmakers. It was,
we're going to ruin your life.
We're going to ruin your life. It was humiliation. And most of them decided, no thanks. And there you have it.
Jonathan, you earlier described it as a use of power that has not been seen before. Is it better to describe it as an abuse of power?
Well, there are many people who believe that it's an abuse of power, particularly Republicans who are on the receiving end of it. There's not sort of many profiles in courage who are willing to come out and say it because, like Maggie said, you're making a choice as a Republican. Am I going to end my political career by opposing Trump? And Trump has a pretty good track record of ending political careers. Or am I just going to keep my concerns to myself and try to muscle through and hope that the next 2.5 years I can just kind of keep myself as small a target as possible and just get through it? That's the dynamic here in Washington.
Did you have any fear of retribution when you took on this task?
No. Hey, we are going to do our jobs one way or the other. And all we can do is be accurate and be as rigorous and also fair-minded as possible.
I mean, Maggie, you know, the president already calls you maggot, such a clever play on your name.
It's actually Margot. It's a French. You're just, you know.
You're so old school.
I'm just so literal, so.
It's maggot. It's maggot.
It's maggot.
Right.
Yeah.
We get it.
Well, how do you respond to that? Just your reaction to such a juvenile approach?
The first time that the president attacked me on social media was in 2012, and it's 2026. He's attacked both of us many times. And Jonathan and I are both seasoned reporters who have been attacked by other politicians. This one just has a very loud megaphone, but when I was covering City Hall under Rudy Giuliani, it wasn't exactly like we were being thrown bouquets for our coverage. It's part of the job, and it doesn't impact what we do.
I mean, he is known for calling people stupid people, for calling them losers. It almost feels like you're in some sort of parallel cartoon universe, but he's not benign, is he? Like, he does go after people.
Yes, but he's also, he's gone after so many members of every industry at this point, but especially the mainstream media that covers him in Washington, that it's a little hard to differentiate sometimes.
There is an effect. You know, when he
true.
does it, threats come through.
That's true.
Which, you know, we don't talk, we tend to just not talk about it because all you do is just encourage people. And again, like, we don't want to be part of a story or we don't see ourselves as protagonists in some great epic battle. We're actually just reporters. Okay. And our job is just reporting and putting it out there. And like, as Maggie said, like Maggie gets it far worse than I ever did.
But you've gotten it. I mean,
sure.
It is.
But Maggie's been dealing with it so long that I think it almost is just like, I mean, he threatened to sue us. And then 3 days before we had our interview with him, and then we meet him in the Oval Office, and it's salesman smiling, whatever. That's the way he is.
What was that meeting like?
It's pretty weird.
You should tell this story.
Pretty odd.
You should tell this story.
We asked him about his presidential power, and he handed us a 2-page document.
Well, he had his aide.
He got his aide, Natalie Harp, to go and fetch this document. And he said it was written by a historian, and he wanted us to read it. So we're sitting opposite Trump across the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, and he's sitting there reading this document, Maggie and I are reading it. And we're like, this is kind of strange. And so it opens by saying Donald Trump is the most powerful man who's ever existed, ever lived on the planet by far. And then it goes on to compare him to what Donald Trump said was, to us, the top 10. And it was Stalin, Mao, Hitler, Napoleon, Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, the Caesars, Alexander the Great, Tamerlane, there's probably one I'm missing. And it had nothing to do with morality. The document didn't mention morality. It was about power and raw power. And the premise at the top was that Donald Trump, which he wanted us to absorb and understand, was that Donald Trump is the most powerful man who's ever existed because he's in charge of the American military, the most powerful military force that has ever existed, and the US economy and technology, which is the most powerful economy that's ever existed. But he's also that he's willing to use that power like other American presidents. So it turned out, we went and did some research. This wasn't a historian. It was written by a former golf caddy for Gary Player, who's a South African golf player and a friend of Trump's. But as strange as the source of that document was, the premise was actually basically the premise of our book, expressed in a different way, which is that Trump is willing to use his power like no American president of our lifetime. And it was just an interesting moment because you might think that a president would recoil from those comparisons. Trump was relishing it. He was reading, he's like, Napoleon, it's very interesting. Mao, Stalin, Hitler. And he said, they use fear to, some of these people, the document said they use fear to wield power. He goes, who would do a thing like that? Wink, wink. And so it was just this weird moment because at the very end of our reporting process, sitting across from the President of the United States, the subject of our book, he was essentially confirming the entire thesis of our book.
Do you think he was trying to impress you? The fact that he was shameless about being compared to these despots.
I think he was trying to show us, when we asked about power and about his use of power and how he viewed himself in the scale of U.S. presidents, because he had been telling people, and we had written this in the book, and to be clear, by the time we had this interview, our reporting was basically done for this book. We'd been asking him to meet with us for a while for a fact-checking interview. But he was confirming the premise of the question, which was about being the most powerful, because that's how he had been describing himself privately, president in the U.S. And here was this thing on paper that was in support of this. And one of the takeaways from it was not just that he was very powerful, in the words of this person whose credentials he was obviously upping, and not just that he was willing to use it. But part of it for him is always being how he's seen. It's not just that he's willing to use it, it's that you understand that he will do this.
I think it's also that he wants to be a sort of Napoleonic...
100%. Yes.
The person who only needs to be known by one name,
exactly,
who is the defining figure of our age. And so when Trump thinks about himself in history, I don't think he's comparing himself to Bill Clinton or to... name your US president, Eisenhower. I think it is to figures like Napoleon, and that he wants to be the defining global figure of our age.
That's right.
And that, I think, helps explain, one of the puzzles of this reporting process that Maggie and I have just gone through for the book is, why is Trump willing to take such bigger risks this term than he did in the first term? I don't think either of us believe that under the same circumstances he would have taken America to war in Iran, or authorized that operation to seize Maduro, or start a trade war with the whole world. He obviously didn't do those things in term one, but even under identical circumstances, neither of us believe, based on the reporting we've done, that he would have. So why? You ask yourself why? Well, why is he so much less reactive to domestic politics? Part of it is that he's not running for re-election, but part of it, which I think he was indirectly acknowledging to us with this sheet of paper, is he wants to be a capital G great man of history. He wants to reshape the world and put his imprint on the world and America in this term. And that's of far more interest to him than gas prices or his polling or how Republicans perform in the midterm elections.
But he's not frightened of being known, rather than a great man, a bad man?
It's a really interesting question.
It's a really good question that I don't know that we can answer. But in Trump's mind, the world is a corrupt place, and he's just more honest about it.
Just getting back to the point about risk-taking, how much of a risk, how chaotic was his decision-making around tariffs?
It really couldn't have been more chaotic. We document this in the book. So the scale of decision, you would think, starting a trade war with the whole world, which is what they did on Liberation Day last year, you would think there would have been a really deep and detailed policy process. There really wasn't. There was sort of a rolling series of bull sessions in the Oval Office with his core team. And the actual formula that was used to determine the tariffs, that formula was only, according to our reporting, no one's disputed that, was only decided the night before that presentation. And it was largely pushed by Peter Navarro, but Trump was, the one who ultimately signed off on it. And he was winging it. This was a theory he'd had for many years, that America was being ripped off and we need to, get back our country, bring back industry. But it wasn't rooted in any kind of deep economic analysis. It was, again, just a gut feeling that Trump had had for many years. And what made his second term different from his first term is that in his first term, he was surrounded by advisors like his top economic advisor, Gary Cohn, former president of Goldman Sachs, who said, "Mr. President, this is a terrible idea. Do not do this. This will crash the economy. This will do all sorts of things." He didn't actually have that this time. He definitely had skeptics on his team, but they weren't forcefully making the case against tariffs to Trump.